at the very end, we have Princess de Rossa, as you all know, on the far left, who is our distinguished MEP. In a manner of speaking, of course. We have Blair Horn, who is General Secretary of the CPSU and conducted his very own launch there very efficiently, very effectively, and you would have seen him on television tonight already. And we have Gráinne Gilmore, who has just arrived, another distinguished barrister, and who has been very much to the fore in the campaign to date. So maybe Gráinne, you'd come up to the table here as well. Now, my role is going to be very brief tonight. I'm just going to introduce the speakers and say a few words at the campaign, about the campaign itself. So our first speaker tonight is going to be Blair Horn of the CPSU, and he is going to outline some of the good work that they have done in research in relation to workers' rights and public services. Blair.
Thanks very much, Joe. We launched this booklet today, and everyone has a copy on your desk, as the Charter Group, which is a group we set up as trade unionists. Des Geraghty is the chairperson of the group, former president of the SIPTU, as you know, and also former MEP, and I'm the secretary of the group. And we've a number of unions who are connected with it, including my own, Impact, CWU, and we hope in the next week or so we can get more of the unions on board. But our purpose is to campaign strongly for the Lisbon Treaty, but also to emphasise the Charter of Fundamental Rights and its importance to workers' rights issues. Can I say at the outset that there are two reasons why, from a workers' rights point of view, this referendum is different, and there are two important changes that can justify us going back and saying to people, even on workers' rights, things have now changed and you can vote yes. The first is the issue SIPTU raised the last time about a problem with collective bargaining rights in Ireland. There's been a major advance on that, in that the European Court of Human Rights has decided that collective bargaining rights are now part of trade union rights under the European Convention on Human Rights, and we believe that Article 28 of the Charter, which has the same right in it, will lead eventually to collective bargaining rights coming on board in Ireland. Not necessarily in a full way initially, but certainly through any issues connected around European issues, or where there's two or more countries involved in it. The second is a solemn declaration. Now, even though it's not legally binding, it is an important statement. It's an important statement at European level that will help us in addressing some of the concerns that have arisen around the European Court of Justice issue. We have a website called www.deadchartergroup.ie. It will hopefully be on a link to the Labour Party website fairly soon, in the next few days. You can access not just this document, but also a range of documents showing how important the European Union has been to the development of workers' rights. That shows that for the last 35 years, over 30 directives have been applied at European level that have essentially 95% of the workers' rights legislation we have in this country come from those 30 directives, spanning equal pay, equal treatment, non-discrimination in other beyond the gender areas, social welfare entitlements in terms of non-discrimination, insolvency of employers, the transfer of undertakings when the business changes ownership, a range of health and safety directives, including the Working Time Directive, which gives entitlement to paid holidays, restricts the amount of time that people can be obliged to work on. All of that comes from Europe, and that's available also on our website.
When you scratch the arguments of the no campaigners, you will find at the root of it all is their unwillingness to share sovereignty in the making of decisions. They use all kinds of spurious arguments to make their case, because they know that it's not possible to make an argument that they don't want to share power in trying to control climate change, for example. It's an impossible argument. The public simply will not buy it, because the public know that every member state must share its capacity to make decisions in the area of climate if we're going to succeed in trying to maintain this world as habitable for our children and our grandchildren. So rather than debate the issue of sharing national sovereignty, they produce spurious arguments about minimum wage and other issues. The point is that national sovereignty is not an indivisible construct. We share it all the time, inside the European Union, outside the European Union. We share it with the United Nations. Every time we sign an international agreement, we are sharing our sovereignty. The reality of the world we live in fact it was always the case, is that we live in each other's shadow. We cannot survive as individuals. Even Robinson Crusoe had to have a man Friday. If I was Robinson Crusoe, I'd prefer a woman for Friday, but I wasn't the author. I wasn't the author of that particular story. But nevertheless, that's the reality of the world. That's the reality of life. We live in each other's shadow. That's true of us as individuals. It's true of us as nations. And I think that it's important that we bear in mind the bigger picture when we're debating the Lisbon Treaty. We're talking here about the future of this country, the future of Europe, our future capacity to influence the direction of Europe, to influence the way the world evolves. And of course, it's important that we get the detail right. But I don't think we should lose ourselves in the detail. We shouldn't lose ourselves in debates about how many angels we can fit on the head of a pin. The reality is the Lisbon Treaty has been negotiated over a 7-year period by 27 member states, by governments, supported by 95% of the political parties elected into government and in opposition right across the European Union. And I think that it's important that Ireland remain part of that and is not isolated. Thank you very much.
I'm a barrister and I'm involved in a group called Lawyers for Europe, a new group, a group of barristers. And our function, as we see it, is twofold. Firstly, to dispel the myths of the No campaign, but secondly, and I think most importantly, to emphasise what we see as the most positive innovations of the Lisbon Treaty in terms of the empowerment of the individual citizen, both politically and legally. Another area, which again I don't think has been dealt with sufficiently, is the question of access to justice, and that's something that really interests me at a European level. There is a notorious difficulty for individuals to access European courts in order to challenge, for instance, a European decision which affects them. There is significant restrictions under the current treaty regime in terms of establishing legal standing before the European courts. That's why you had, for instance, the infamous Greenpeace case a few years ago, where the European Commission had granted funding to a number of nuclear power stations in the Canary Islands, and local residents were not able to establish standing before the European Court in order to challenge that Commission decision. Lisbon removes that restriction on individuals, or that particularly onerous restriction on individuals in terms of developing standing before the European Court. So it significantly improves access to justice for individuals. Today, I think it's also worth talking a little bit, or giving a little bit of time to women's rights and the Lisbon Treaty. I believe that something like 58% of those who voted no in the last referendum were in fact women. I think a lot of people were surprised by that, given the fact that the genesis of almost all employment equality legislation has been the European Union. So it's worth bearing in mind, well, what is it about Lisbon that is good for women? What is it about Lisbon which is gender specific? I don't think we can be complacent about women's rights. There is the right to parental leave, which will now be enshrined in the Charter of Fundamental Rights. Of course, it already was in the Charter of Fundamental Rights, but that is now incorporated into primary law. The Charter of Fundamental Rights also obliges member states to promote gender equality. Well, you might say, well, we already have parental leave in legislation. Why do we even need this? Well, I think particularly coming into a recession, it's important that we have a rights-based approach to gender equality. I think it is essential, because in a recession, as I think most of us know, it is often women who are at the front line in the workplace. It is women who suffer because, particularly working parents, because they lose their bargaining position with regards to looking for flexibility with working hours, etc., in the workplace. So these are exceptionally important rights that are included in the Charter.
I'd also like to say this evening, not least in the light of recent posters that have gone up in Dublin by some of the No organisation, one in particular organisation, CORE, that we are in an advanced stage of discussions with senior and very authoritative church figures, Catholic and Protestant, in order to facilitate some sort of serious presentation of Europe's Christian cultural heritage than has hitherto been the case. One of the characteristics of previous referenda has been the absence of any voice or any seriously authoritative voice in that quarter, and that's something we're working very closely on. Regarding how